where the West begins in Fort Worth, Texas, to around the globe. You are listening to Talk of the Night. And now, your host, Paranormal Phil. Thank you, and good evening, good morning, wherever you may be around the world, around the globe, or even in your own backyard. I am Paranormal Phil, and later on in the show tonight, we're going to be joined by my guest, Nicole Fanning, as we talk about dating and relationships in this day and age. We're also going to talk about her books, Catalyst and Ignite, and her third book coming up. But first, up on the Talk of the Night website, under the story of the day, while the basic science behind human connection has remained constant, changes. I forgot to read the title. Changes in dating over the past 50 years, while the basic science behind human connection has remained constant. How people connect and act on emotions is always changing. Now, while love and attraction may be a matter of chemistry, behavior and feelings is a product of social norm. There are various influences on romantic behavior that constantly shift and evolve. Things like political movements, advances in healthcare, such as contraceptives, shifts in communication, and new technology, to name a few. Over the past 5 decades, there has been a tremendous amount of evolution in the dating culture. Dating apps, for example, have changed how we seek out love these days. However, there are downsides to it, from things like catfishing, ghosting, and breadcrumbing. It has defined the current dating culture. The landscape of the dating scene is much different from what it was 50, 30, and even just 10 years ago. And of course, you can read that up on the Talk of the Night website under the story of the day by clicking on the link below it. So let's talk about my guest here real quick, and then we'll bring her on. Nicole is a smitten wife and super proud dog mom to 3 rambunctious rescue dogs. She is an old school romantic with proactive I know I mispronounced that word, for a little mischief, and a session with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Her novel Catalyst is the first installment of the Hearts of Inferno series, which we're going to talk about tonight, which follows the story of a dangerous mafia don and the girl who became his only exception. So please welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on the show. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself while I work on the Scott thing.
So I am an author, and I'm a dog mom, and my life pretty much revolves around those two things. But I've been writing since I was a kid, and it just kind of has always been a passion for me, and something that I never actually thought would become a reality until the pandemic kind of happened. And it was like, hey, maybe it's time to start doing some things that are from the heart versus, from this place of, I just need to provide and make money and that kind of stuff. So it ended up being a work of love. And, now I'm here and I'm excited to be releasing my 3rd book this fall. And yeah.
Okay, so what got you all interested in the whole topic of dating, relationships, and stuff like that led to writing these books?
So I just think that, obviously we are defined by our relationships, even as early as our relationships with our parents and family and cousins, that kind of stuff. You're used to interacting with those people. And so that kind of shapes you into the person you're going to be when you start dating somebody romantically. And I think putting that in a book, there's a level of responsibility that you have to make sure that you are, highlighting healthy relationships. So even in the mafia story that I've written here, Jackson is a dangerous dude and he does bad things. illegal bad things. But at the same time, when it comes to Natalie, like, she is his soft spot, and he's a single dad as well, so he has a young daughter. But like, those relationships to me were so important because I wanted to highlight that, like, when you are in love with somebody and it is that, you know, special connection, you treat them differently. Like, they're put on that pedestal. They're so important to you. And I think you learn that as a kid. You know, like, I was very grateful. I had a great father, and so he definitely was, you know, raised me as daddy's little princess. And I think that kind of created this idea of a hopeless romantic and always having that high standard for the men that I dated.
Okay, yeah, because, like, for me, I grew up in the early 70s, so things have changed quite a bit since then. But
I bet they have. No,
my parents were married for 37 years. They were married all the way up to their deaths. And everything like that. And so that kind of shaped my thinking on how I saw relationships and dating and stuff like that, where I was born into more of that old school type romance, dating, and everything like that. And
yeah, that's me too.
I'm hoping that that this is comes into play in the books, but we're going to talk about that later in the show.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's kind of unique in the sense that it is a modern day romance, but it does have that old school feel to it. So there is that sense of, like, wooing and, like, the falling in love, and, you know, once you are in love, like, that person becomes your whole world. So yeah, I can definitely go into more detail on it.
Okay, now speaking of the old days versus now, what is your thoughts on dating and relationships in this day and age?
I think it's tough. Like you said, like, I was raised, again, with, you know, a family that was more traditional and conservative in values. You know, and I was lucky that, like, I met my husband young, and, you know, we had a long romance and, you know, courtship, whatever you want to call it. But I think that it's really tough now to be in the dating and relationship world because there's so much disconnect, especially with, like, your phones and, like, 40 different things that, like, definitions for, like, what your relationship is. Like, we're dating, we're exclusive, we're just talking, we're, you know, getting to know each other. We're just, like,
stuff like that.
Like, you don't know what it is.
Yeah, and then, of course, it as I mentioned in the story of the day, about different things, which some of those I've experienced. Oh, well, one of them I experienced was the ghosting thing, but I don't think I've ever been catfished or breadcrumb, which, for those that don't know what the term breadcrumbing means, it means being led on with no expectations of a commitment. Right.
Well, and I have experience, like, I have friends that have experienced ghosting a lot, and that kind of started even, like, 10 years ago. Just people, there's no, like, I guess the word is, like, there's a lack of respect, because if you're dating someone or you're just talking to someone, there's really nothing stopping you from telling that person, hey, like, either I'm going in a different direction, or I've met someone else, or, you know, I'm just not that into this. Like, that's a one-time phone call or conversation.
Yeah. Are you there?
Pretend like they don't exist and this never happened.
I lost you there for a second.
Oh, no. Basically just saying, like, instead of there being this mutual respect and, you know, like, a little bit of courage to be honest with someone and say, hey, like, I'm just not into this.
Yeah. Okay. Nicole.
Somebody else or whatever, and just being honest. They're just like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's uncomfortable. I'm just going to, like, block them and pretend like I never existed in this.
Yeah. Nicole,
so, like,
you're cutting,
no respect for that.
You're cutting out. You're cutting out bad. Tell you what, try the Skype real quick and we'll reconnect with you.
Okay.
Okay, so give me a moment, folks, while we try to reconnect Nicole with Skype because her phone connection is cutting out, so we're going to try this. Okay, let's try this. This should hopefully be better. Oh, that's much better.
Yay! Okay, good. Sorry about that.
No worries. I mean, it happens. Like I said, I was dealing with the computer gremlins last night, so I know all about it.
I gotcha.
So
yeah, no, my point was basically just about there seems to be like a lack of respect for the other person, and that people are a little bit cowardly in the sense that they don't want to deal with the uncomfortable conversations. And I come from that old school world. Like, God forbid, I don't need to be dating anybody. I'm happily married. Yeah. But if I was, I would still want to be like, hey, like, I'm just not that into this, or I've met somebody else, or I'm really sorry, I'm going in a different direction. Like, can we be friends? And I would respect whatever that person has said. But I do think that, like, if you are going to get involved with somebody and be talking to them regularly and, maybe planning or, envisioning a future with that person, you owe it to them to, be honest if that vision changes. And, but I just think that people have kind of shied away from anything that's uncomfortable. So the idea of having that uncomfortable conversation is, more is not as difficult as just being like, nope, I'm just going to shut off my phone and pretend like this never happened. And, we never were talking.
Oh, I've had them just completely disappear, even off of Facebook and social media, no contact. It's like, Billy, I mean, I would at least give you a call to say, okay, this is not working, or talk to you in person and say, right, okay, I don't see us going any further than this. And,
right.
And given that common courtesy. Thing. But again, like I said, I was born in a different era and everything like that. And I grew up on the old ways of treating people with respect and everything like that.
Yeah, no, it's certainly one of those things where it seems like common sense, but to us it's common sense because, again, like we were raised a little bit differently. Like to me, that's just how it was. And I'm grateful that when I was dating, like that was the norm. Did people have messy breakups? Yeah, but they had a breakup. Like nowadays it's, like suddenly if you're ghosted, it's like that person just fell off of a cliff and you're just left there in limbo. And it's really sad when I'm hearing from my friends, like the effects that it has on them when it happens to them, because it all of the fallout from being ghosted could be completely avoided with a 2-minute phone call. Just even, this isn't working for me. You're a nice person, but I'm sorry, I'm doing something else with my life. I mean, that was 10 seconds?
Yeah. Yeah. All of 10 seconds.
Right.
And I've also been to the point where I've been cheated on and stuff like that. I get that happens. It even happened even in my parents' day and age, but it doesn't have to be that way as far as my thinking goes.
Right. No, it could be so much easier if people were just honest and upfront with each other. But yeah, there's a bit of cowardice there for sure.
Now, what is your thoughts on, we mentioned ghosting and catfishing and everything like that. And speaking of catfishing, a lot of these dating apps and with technology these days, people are using these filters, especially women, that nobody really knows what you look like anymore. Whereas, or you show that image, and people that on the other side are looking at that and thinking, "Ooh." It's not just women, but it could happen with guys too. But using a different picture or something like that, but you see that, and then you meet in person, and it's like, this is not the person that I met online.
Right. No, I think that they're, obviously the whole idea of the glamour shots or the profile shots Like, those can't be taken for this person looks like this all of the time. So I think that, there's a responsibility on both parties to just be honest and be like, hey, like, even if it's like sending a goofy shot or something, like, here's me in a Star Wars hat, or, here's me with my dog, in like my messy bun and my glasses, just so that that person does see, like, yeah, that you can look like the glamour shot, but at the same time, you're a real person. And there is a level of, we can be anything we want online. So just making sure that we're being honest with each other and not just perpetuating this online persona that, you're not going to be perfect 24/7. You're not going to wake up with full makeup, not a hair out of place. That's not like reality. Yeah. And at the same time, we're in a world where we're trying to promote body positivity and, body autonomy and, really loving who you are. And I think that as long as everybody's sharing like the real pictures as much as they're sharing the pretty pictures, I think that's important too.
Yeah, and of course, like me, I've taken pictures of me holding my cane and stuff like that because I am a disabled veteran, so I get around like that, and I want to make sure that I am up in front, but also at the same time, I want to make what I feel is important to me known, because a lot of people don't put that out there, and I get it. People are afraid of putting too much information out there, but like me, people might, in this day and age, might call me shallow for saying I don't want bigger women. Well, that's just my preference. I mean, I used to date bigger women. I have no problem with it. It's just not what I'm into now. But I put that out there to let people know this is what I want. And I still get the people that are like that. It's like, did you not read what I just put down? And I think we lost that too, is people are just looking at the images and going, ooh, I like that person, without looking at who the person is.
Right. Well, and I think everybody's entitled, like, you can't help what you are attracted to. So, being honest about that is fair. But I do think, that none of us are perfect. And again, like, it's so easy to put out there this like perfect online persona. And it's something that I try, at least with my TikToks, because like, I love, getting pretty for my TikToks and, doing my hair and wearing my red lipstick. And, I love that. But then I'll also do TikToks where I do have no makeup on and I am in a messy bun, because I want my readers to understand that, like, I am a real person. Like, that's me. That's what I do. Yeah.
That's who I am, and
right.
that's
like, this
the
is,
real
this
me.
When I'm writing these soft books for you, I'm not writing them, in full makeup with perfect hair, wearing some ball gown. I'm writing them in a messy bun with my writing glasses on and my sweatpants. So, like, that's me. And I think that, it's tough because you do want to put that best foot forward, but at the same time, we have to be understanding of other people's faults. And maybe not just faults, but like we have to be understanding of the inner beauty and really getting to know someone too. So attraction is important, but attraction and looks and all that stuff does fade over time, and nobody is going to be as perfect as their profile pictures forever. Yeah. So we have to remember that.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, I love when I'm on dating apps. I'll look at the whole profile. I'll read about it. If they don't have nothing on there, it's like, really, why you can't even just say one sentence of what you're about and everything like that. But give the person something to say, okay, this is the personality that I want. I mean, I can go for looks all I want. I could date a supermodel, but like you said, looks fade and everything like that, but that personality is always going to be there.
Right. Right, and that's the problem with like all of our dating and stuff is like practically all online. So everybody and their uncle is putting forth these absolutely perfect photos, and there's no like that's all you see before you meet someone. So it's important to have those deep conversations and be able to kind of take those walls down and make sure that you are sharing those like makeup free photos. The fact that you do have messy bun sweatpants days on top of having your glamour shot days.
Yeah.
I think that stuff's important. But, this is all part of us moving to this completely digital age of dating completely online. And it's just wild. It's so wild compared to like even how I grew up in the dating world that I was raised in. So
yeah. Now, kind of going off of that last question and segueing into this is, you talked about we're going more into that digital age of dating, but what do you think of people meeting in person versus people meeting online? Which way do you think we should be headed? Or, I mean...
Well, to be perfectly honest, like, I don't know. I don't think that we are at a point where we can go back from, like, meeting people online. Like, do I think that it's somewhat easier to meet somebody in the wild? And
never heard it put that way.
I remember, right? Like a time when we met people at bars or in college or whatever. I do think that's easier to do that, and then obviously have like that instant connection that's physical. However, again, like we're in 2022, I don't think that like online dating is going away anytime soon. It's just, it's too convenient. It's too just ingrained in who we are. So I think that it's going to be here for a while. I think my personal preference would be like meeting people in the wild. But I think that it just doesn't work for anybody anymore, especially when everybody is just like, well, I got to go to my job, and then I got to go do this hobby thing that I do, and then I got to go home, and like maybe I'll scan through some profiles when I get there, and maybe I'll meet somebody. And like that's the problem, though, is that we're looking for that convenience factor versus, that connection factor.
Yeah, and of course, like me, I quit drinking quite a while back, so I don't really do the bar scene, but I do go out to places of interest, like here in Fort Worth, we got the Stockyards. I'll go there. I mean, there's bars there, but I don't, and I will go to like the big nightclub for concerts, but as far as going into the bars to meet people, so I had to adjust my way of meeting people out in the wild. But it gives a different perspective because you see people outside of the bars. You see people without the beer goggles on. And
right.
That can also lead into a whole different way of seeing people as well. When you're constantly drunk or drinking and you're not seeing the person for who they are. Right.
Well, and I think you're missing you're also missing a bunch of social cues and like idiosyncrasies that would either make or break like your attraction to that person. If you're completely plastered, I do like not say that you're a great judge of character, but probably not. And you're missing out on so many of those things that, again, if you were sober, you'd be like, oh, this is a little strange, or like, oh, I really like that about that person. So you're missing out on that human element there.
Yeah. Now, what is your whole thought on the whole online dating thing? Because when I started dating back in the early 90s, I'm just kind of dating myself here. But anyways, there was video dating. You actually had to go to a place, record a video, and people had to go into that place and look through all these different videos and stuff like that. I guess that was a precursor to the whole online dating apps.
Yeah, well, and I think I remember my mom kind of like doing some of that stuff too, but I guess like as soon as I started, like when I was 13, because I remember AIM being where I talked to one of my first boyfriends. I talked to him on AIM. And And like, that's kind of where it started. And, you know, there's a fun, like, you know, if it's done right, you can definitely have like flirty conversations via text and everything. But I think it's kind of the difference between like surviving on like life support versus like actually living, because you're just getting like a piece of that person's personality. You're getting the best of them because they are hiding behind a keyboard and they have time to come up with the perfect answer, versus if you guys were in person and, you know, they were kind of just giving you their natural reactions, it might be different. And so I think that's where like those online personas can be like, they can just be a bit dangerous if people aren't really being themselves. Because it allows some people to be like, I'm going to be who I want to be, but not necessarily who I am. So like, you can have this online relationship with someone, be dating for 6 months, you know, get together. You still have that connection. And then, you know, when the real relationship stuff starts, you're like, you're a completely different person. Like, this is not at all who I thought you were. But in truth, you don't really know because you haven't like spent that time with that person. Yeah. However, I'm not going to be downplaying the relevance or the connection that is made on these sites. Like my mom and stepdad got together on a dating site. A lot of people I know have met through dating sites. They are effective.
I'm not saying that they ain't.
No, yeah, right. Like, they wouldn't be around if they were a complete flop. So like, we've talked about all the negative stuff of it, but there is a lot to be said for the benefits of it and people who have met on those dating sites and had real connections. So, you know, I do think, but like, they've probably put the effort into, again, share those, you know, raw pictures, have those hard conversations, you know, maybe do like the video chats and like the meetups and things like that too. Like, it's not saying that like online dating is a complete flop. It's just saying that you have to make more of an effort to be your real self with a person, and you have to trust that they're doing the same thing for you.
Yeah, now a lot of the dating apps that I've seen and that I've been on, yes, I've done the whole POF thing, which has become basically a Tinder thing. But I don't do that no more. But I have a friend that out in California that met his wife on one of those dating apps. And like you said, there are good aspects to it, but I think where it's lacking is a lot of that personal connection. As you mentioned, the phone calls, the video chats, the in person and everything like that.
You could like you could have a great connection with someone and then find out that like their cologne or their body hygiene just doesn't work for you. So like, we're missing that element there too.
that and body language too. Right. Because you can read a lot about a person by their body language. Right.
So again, like, it's not that it's completely useless. I just think that you have to, at some point, I think people have to have real conversations about what they're looking for. Like, you mentioned Tinder and other sites that are specifically geared towards just like quick hookups. Not to say that people haven't, you know, met for longer relationships on there, but people have, like, when you're meeting someone and talking with someone, you have to have those conversations about what you're both looking for. And if you are both looking for like actual long-term romance to be with the one, or, you know, I hate the idea of the one, even though I write romance that deals with soulmates and the one.
Well, see, a lot of these questions I'm asking are going to probably play into when we talk about the book.
But my point is, like, I have a hard time with like the words "the one," because I feel like to some degree the one is also the one you choose, like the one you choose to be your priority, that you choose to make, you know, that priority, and that you choose to build that life with. So, you know, yes, could you be destined for each other? Absolutely. And some people feel that. Some people don't have that soulmate connection, but they do have this great friendship relationship with this person, along with like sexual chemistry. So I feel like it is both like fate and sometimes a choice too. And that, you know, keeping that relationship going, is certainly a choice, because you could be fated to meet someone, and if you don't put the work in, you could be fated to lose that person.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, we are at the half, so we're going to take a short, quick commercial break, but we'll be back with my guest, Nicole Fanning, as we talk about dating and relationship in this day and age, and her books later on in the show. We'll be right back.
How did I get so lucky? I die when I look in your eyes, then I come back alive when you touch me. You're the one for me, so here I am to give all I have. I'm in love with you, and you know that it's true. You can always count on me to carry you through. And if you get scared, remember I'll be right there with you. Here's what I'll do. I'm gonna hold you all through the night.
Do you have a talk radio, Facebook Live, or YouTube show and would like guests for your show but don't know where to go to get them? Well, go to radioguestlist.com and sign up today. They have all different experts in different fields, and you can find the ones that are just right for your show. That's radioguestlist.com. Sign up today. It's free.
To advertise on Talk in the Night, send an email to talkinthe.night@outlook.com. Talk in the Night has plans to fit your budget. Get your product or business heard around the world by the Talk in the Night listening audience. Plans include 30-second spots and banner ads on the show's website and mentioned on the social media sites. So get your product or business heard around the world today. Shop the Talk in the Night merch store today and pick up one of the many products with 9 different designs to choose from. The store has men's and women's apparel, drinkware, houseware, and accessories. Pick up a t-shirt, coffee mug, or anything else on there and support the show today. Go to talkinthe.night.com to find a link to the merch store.
Strangers, am I wrong? This feeling right? You make me wonder, could we start a better life? We don't know where it's going, but we ain't going slow. I wanna fall in love tonight, you and I.
And now, back to Talk in the Night with your host, Paranormal Bill. Okay, and we are back with my guest, Nicole Fanning, as we talk about dating and relationship in this day and age. And we're also going to talk about her books a little bit later on in the show. Now, I know you were trying to talk to me during the show, but I'm borderline deaf and I got these earpieces on, so it makes it even more difficult because it's extra loud in my ear. So it's kind of hard to hear. That's another reason why I don't talk during the commercial breaks.
got you. No worries.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about online dating and dating apps and stuff like that. And how do you think technology has played a part in the whole dating and relationship scene?
I mean, I think at this point, it's made itself a permanent third wheel. Whether you are in a completely online relationship or whether you are just dating someone, technology is always used in like your relationships. Like whether you're just calling that person 3 times a day to tell them you love them, or sending them selfies or videos, or voice notes, like our technology has become a permanent third wheel in our relationships. And, you know, it obviously facilitates a lot of, you know, amazing things. Like you think about even like being part of the military, like, I don't know, I don't want to give like an exact number, but there was a time when you waited for those letters from your spouse, whether you were deployed or you were the person who was waiting back home for them. And it could take weeks before you have any word at all. And now, like our military and, you know, the wives and husbands of people who are at home, they can talk to their spouse, whether they're a world away, every 30 minutes if they want. So it has a lot of advantages. It's made a lot of things possible. But it's definitely part of your relationship and probably will continue to be.
Yeah, like you were talking about the military. Like I said, I was in the Navy for 3 years. That's all I did. But getting a hold of people back when I was in the mid-90s, it was difficult then because you didn't really have cell phones. You actually had to write a letter and mail it out and wait for a helicopter to pick it up, take it over to the carrier, and then they had to have a plane flight to the mainland to ship over. If you were overseas, you had to wait for it to get to a post office in one of the ports, and then it had to be flown back over to the United States. And like you said, it took weeks. Now, we did have like satellite phones where we got privileges every once in a while to where we can contact somebody on the phone, but that was very few and far in between. And as you mentioned, there are good aspects to it, but there are also the bad things where people are, I notice a lot of times people are out on dates and stuff like that where they're just staring at their phones and not paying attention to the other person. I think we've lost a lot in that aspect of things.
Absolutely. You know, my husband and I have been together for a long time, and sometimes like one of the two of us will just stop and be like, let's just go like do something together, because we realize that we're in the same space and we're both on our phones, like doing separate things. As an author, I do a lot of writing on my phone, you know, all day long. So that's like a big deal. And then, you know, obviously I have like articles and stuff that I write too. And, you know, my husband being an attorney, like he does a lot of stuff on his phone as well. And so it can be really easy to just like get lost in that. So again, like you have to have that commitment to that person where you are still having that interaction. But yeah, like it does have a lot of advantages. I think it's going to be how you choose to use it. I don't think that, again, it's all bad. I think that if you are, again, like a military spouse and you're using it to have that connection with someone overseas, or, you know, being able to show your husband their new baby for the first time, like that stuff's really beautiful when you see that and you realize like how far we've come. But at the same time, it can kind of get in there and also create this like gigantic, like gaping canyon between the two of you. So it really is just dependent upon how much you allow it to rule your relationship. As long as like you're the one in charge and the technology isn't the one in charge, I think you're in good shape.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have lost that thing. I mean, I've seen people texting each other while they're sitting across from each other. It's like, really? You can't look up for 5 seconds?
Right.
I mean, I think even Family Guy Family Guy or The Simpsons, I think it was Family Guy, has made fun of that and everything like that too. But
yeah, well, I was actually thinking of like when you were talking about how someone's profile picture can look so different from who they are. I think South Park did an episode where like the boys in the group, like the girls went and they printed off these like glamour shots of themselves, and the boys in the group would walk around with the girl holding the picture of herself. And like it was kind of just like a metaphor, but basically like, yeah, this is who she is, and you know, it's just completely different. It was just wild. Yeah. What, you know, you can what these shows can kind of like get away with satirically talking about.
Yeah, I know. Now, I mentioned earlier about the way I was kind of raised, and you talked about the way you were raised as far as relationships and dating and stuff like that. And of course, like I said, I was born in the early 70s, so I grew up in a whole different time than a lot of people that are in the dating world these days. But also, I'm a firm believer in the old school way of dating, like I said, courting a woman, chivalry, and so forth. Do you think we've lost that way of thinking in the dating world, or do you think it still exists?
I do think that it does still exist with the right people. And it's obviously something that I write about in my books too. But I think that meeting the right person can obviously bring out the best in you. And so I think that we haven't lost the idea of romance or chivalry. Like, we know what those things entail. And yeah, it can be opening car doors, or it can be walking on the on the outside of the street and putting her on the inside of the sidewalk. It can be stuff like that, but it also can be, just communicating with her when you're out with a guy's night and like, hey, like, just so you know, like, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing. Just because, like, you value that relationship and you want that open honesty with that person, and you don't want them to, like, even doubt where you are and what you're doing. So I think that, like, when you're in the right relationship, like, romance comes easy. It shouldn't be difficult to, want to take care of your person. And again, it's all about just, like, making that person a priority and, trusting that they're doing that for you as well.
Yeah, like me, I'm so busy nowadays with my radio show that I have a hard time finding time to do anything else until I can afford to hire people to help me with everything, because not only am I the show's host, but I'm also the booking agent, the show's producer, the sound engineer, the webmaster, the voiceover artist, the production promotion crew, so marketing, I do all that, so I don't have time, but I know that I am busy with that stuff, so I'm not going to prioritize myself to somebody or get with somebody that I don't have time for and everything like that. And I think that's another thing we kind of lost is don't get into something until you're actually ready for it.
Right. Yeah, no, we have to be honest with ourselves about where we're at too. And I don't know. I'm kind of an optimist in the sense that, like, I don't believe that people are, like, inherently trying to hurt other people. I think we're just heading towards a place in society where people are just selfish in general. So we want things that make us feel good. We want to feel good. We want to do what we want to do. In dating, that can look like, okay, well, I'm talking to this guy right now and he makes me feel good, but okay, now I'm bored and I'm going to move on and I'm going to do this instead. And then, there's no respect. There's no, like, hey, we're done. It's just, she just stops talking to him for that period of time. But I don't think that it's inherently, like, evil. I just think that we're all about self-gratification at this point. And it's, when you are ready to be in a relationship with someone and you truly love that person, I feel like their needs are more important than yours. Yeah. Like, to you, like, you put their happiness and their, success is, like, high on your list because you're also getting fulfilled by that person who's making you a priority. Now, I'm not saying that, that means that you shouldn't care about yourself or you should just live for someone else, but it's the idea that when you truly love someone, like, you love their, like, you want their happiness above your own. If it means sacrificing something on your part or even, like, losing that person and saying, like, okay, like, you're happy somewhere else with someone else. Like, I want that for you. Is that hard? Yeah. Is that, like, true love? Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause you want them happy, even if it's not with you. So I think that, again, like, when it's a good relationship, but it's a solid foundation, like, that selfishness, it just kind of becomes, it's on the back burner. It's not as important, what you want as much as, what your partner needs from you and what you want to give to that person. Yeah,
and that's why, like I said, I want to prioritize myself right now, while I am still single and I don't have to worry about being in a relationship, but eventually I'm going to get to that point where I know I'm going to have to cut back and figure out ways to work around my time to where I can make time for somebody and everything like that. But I think a lot of people rush into things sometimes without thinking, okay, do I have time for this? Even with having kids, they rush into it and think, oh, this is great. And then they get to that point where I don't have time for this or that. And I think that hurts a lot of relationships.
Yeah, I am a big advocate for, I don't think that having children should define you as a couple. I think that it just puts too much pressure on the children in general, even subconsciously. And I don't think if like your relationship is having any kind of struggles that like adding children to the mix it's the equivalent of putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It's just not, it's not a good situation. And I think for me, again, like this is just my opinion, but I was raised in that traditional environment where like you and your spouse, like that's your partner. Even as like a mother, like, everybody wants to be like, my kids are my life. But, like, your spouse needs to be your life. Like, if you're in a plane that's crashing, you need to put your mask on before you put your kids' masks on. And I think that level of respect and love trickles down to the children because they know, like, dad is number one in, like, my case. But, like, I'm a very close second. Like, your kids are a very close second, but your, relationship and connection with your spouse can't just disappear as soon as you have kids either. Yeah. And I'm very cautious to talk about that because I don't have kids right now. I have fur kids. But it's things that my married friends with kids have said to me about how it works, because I've done interviews with them and talked to them about this. And it's things that they've said, like they still make their spouse a priority. They still do their date nights. They still, have those nights away from the kids where it's important. But at the end of the day, like if you're trying to create a good example for your children, having a healthy relationship in the home is the best way to do that. Yeah.
Now, of course, I've never had kids myself yet. I hope to one of these days, but I'm pushing 50 next year. So,
yay!
So it's getting a little more difficult on that aspect of things. But there was one that, one woman that I dated for 10 years, and of course it was a long distance relationship. I don't know how I made it last that long. But she ended up, I've learned that she was cheating on me. But at the beginning of things, she had 2 girls and everything like that. Of course she lost them because of court issues, which we're not going to get into. But the time that I met the kids, I knew she was tired and everything like that. So I kind of took on the kids as my own, even though they weren't my own. And I said, "Don't worry about it." I prioritized her to give her a chance to relax. And I said, "I'll go in. I'll read them bedtime story. I'll put them to bed and everything like that." I didn't mind because I was worried about her being so exhausted and everything like that, and I knew she needed that break.
Right. I mean, and our moms are amazing first and foremost. Like they put their kids above like so many things in their own needs a lot of the time. And they do. I don't know a single mom who doesn't need a break. Yeah. Put it that way. And, just having a partner that can sense that, whether that's, hey, we're shipping the kids to grandma's house, or we're getting a sitter, or, we're just going to go sleep in a hotel for a night, just have some peace and quiet together. Or, that the partner that takes that load from you and is like, hey, I'm going to let you go take a nap and a shower and I'll watch the kids and put them to bed. Like kind of like what you said. I think that's why it's so important that you have the right person by your side, because when you are too tired to carry on, you have to trust that that person can pick it up and keep going.
Yeah.
Especially as a parent, because like you don't get days off as a parent. That's why I have so much respect for all of the parents that I know, because I know that it's a huge sacrifice. And something that, like, those of us without kids, like, we can talk to it, but we're not experts on it by any means. And, it's really humbling to see that. So having the right person there to be able to support you through those times is really, really important.
Yeah. Now, I want to touch on another thing here. I've seen this a lot more in this day and age compared to when I was first getting into the dating world. Of course, I feel I was born in the wrong era. I should have been born back in the old West time. But when the guys took more of the lead, but with women being more empowered these days, and I see that a lot. Do you think they should play a part in the whole dating process as far as taking that lead and initiating some stuff, or should it be like it used to be with the guy taking the lead?
You mean like in a relationship?
Yeah,
like,
as far as connecting with somebody, because like there's one dating
like
app.
taking the first move?
Yeah, kind of that, because like in Bumble, one of the dating apps, it's where the women take the first move.
Women reach out first. Yeah. So I'm on the fence on this. I, again, like grew up like traditionally and that kind of thing. And I love that idea that like the man is the one who makes the first move. However, I am not a person who usually lets men make the first move. Because I am just so like, I want what I want. And if I want that, then that's what I'm going for. So yeah. And I should preface, like, I actually met, like, my husband and I did meet on MySpace back when that.
A lot of people remember that.
Yeah. So, like, we've met there, and I think we were connected by a friend of mine, and she and him had gone on a date, and it wasn't, like, a great date because they were just different personalities. And she was like, hey, I have this friend that you should meet. She's a lot more like you. And I don't know which one of us like made that first move, but for the most part, when you are like, I know that I'm more of a dominant female and I just go after what I want. And, he's kind of the same way. So I think that's a tough one. I don't think there's really like a way that it should be done. I think it's whatever works for you guys. Yeah. And who makes the first move is not nearly as important as, how the relationship pans out. So It can be a funny story. Like if she thought he was cute and she went after him, it doesn't really matter as long as it's true love and they're happy. Yeah. So yeah, it's not a bad thing either way, whoever does it first. So
yeah. And speaking of that, what is your thoughts on women that ask guys out? I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. I support it because I would do it too. I think that's not something that we can like hold to anymore. Like if we're just in a world where we're trying to meet somebody that we want to spend the rest of our life with, like if we are feeling something and we want to go for it, then go for it. I don't think there's any, secret rule book we have to follow to make sure that we fall in love. I think that, whoever wants to pursue that relationship should do so and, let it rise or fall based on the merit of the relationship. So I think absolutely let her do it. Let her go first.
Yeah. And I think a lot of, TV, movie, books, not romance novels. I'm not putting your novels down because I had a chance to read a little bit, but not too much because I'm not a big reader. I always scan through things, especially when I have guests. I'm more the person that likes to do something. Like when I got into radio, I just got out there. I read, kind of skim read, and then like watch videos, and I'm like, okay, this is how I do this, how I do this. More that way of figuring out things
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I like, me and my friends have joked a lot about how, like, some of my single friends have said, like, I've fallen in love with men that were written by women. Like, and so there is that aspect to it too, where we are writing, boys, like, we're writing what we want to see. So like they are in a manual of sorts. Like, anybody, I think, could pick up my books or, a lot of other romance author books and read what the ladies want to be wooed with. I guess is the PG way of saying that. Yeah. But yeah, so I think that and that's also why, like, we have a responsibility as authors to be creating a good, healthy, like, view of a relationship. And, like, I wrote mafia, like, thriller romance. That's what my books are. And that genre can be very aggressive. It can be very dark. It can have a lot of, like, consent issues when it comes to relationships, because there's, like, 3 common themes with mafia romance, which is, that she's kidnapped and developed some sort of Stockholm syndrome love for him, and then we glorify that. Or, like, they hate each other and they're forced, like, a forced arranged marriage, and, we glorify that. Or, she was a witness in something and she shouldn't have seen it, and, now she's, like, forced or falls in love with him based on pity or guilt. And so I love the idea of the mafia romance, because I'm always a sucker for, like, a villain or, like, the anti-hero. And the morally gray characters. I love those. But I did want to know, like, what would it look like if, you have this dangerous, devious, deadly mafia don who falls for, like, a regular girl. She's an ER nurse. And, like, what would that look like if he did try to woo her, like, the real way? Where, when she kind of sees a few things that are a little suspicious and she calls him on it, he decides just to tell her the truth, about his life. And, she in turn, like, doesn't run off into the night just terrified. Like, she's falling in love with him. And, like, what would that look like? How would they have to compromise? How would that old school romance, like, wooing and courtship look as well? Along with, like, a modern day Speed. So, yeah. I think that, we have a responsibility to make sure the images and the messages we're sending in our books are healthy, because they are shaping the way people view romance. And I'll admit, like, I love a good dark romance where, guy grabs her by her throat and shoves her against the wall and kisses her really hard. And I love that stuff. But if that's all there is in that relationship, that can... not realistic.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Now, I think I was going to ask one more question, but we got 2 minutes. I think we can get to it real quick. But the past 2 years have been tough on people and everything with the pandemic and everything like that, although I got my different beliefs on that, but that's another show for another day. But how do you think the pandemic has played a part in the way people have met people? And do you think it's helped or hurt relationships?
Oh, I think that's tough. I think there's definitely a lot of relationships that made it through the pandemic stronger. Because if you're stuck in the house and that's the only person you get to talk to all the time, you really realize if, you can stand that person. Thankfully, like, I had someone, like, my husband's fantastic and I loved being stuck in the house with him for all that time. And I'm a homebody, so I missed my friends and family, but, like, to the same sense, like, it was almost too much for me. Like, I was too much of a homebody. But I do think that there's certainly some relationships that didn't make it out of the pandemic. And it did make online dating and meeting people harder, because then there was no chance of, hey, let's meet online, but then let's also just, go to a bar and have a drink and actually meet in person. Well, you couldn't do that. So you were Zoom dating somebody.
Yeah, or the constant texting like you talked about earlier.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But we are at the top of the hour, so we'll be right back after the short commercial break with my guest, Nicole Fanning, as we talk about dating, relationship in this day and age. Also, in this hour, we're going to get into her books, Catalyst and Ignite, and the whole Hearts of the Infernal series. We'll be right back.
Don't want to regret, don't want to upset you. Fix my hair in the mirror. What you think when you see her? Hope she got class, cash doesn't get past you. I know you like it when I'm right by you. Do anything for you to like me too. I've been trying to find myself in you for too long. Always realigned myself for you for too long.
The weather is getting warmer and people are out and about. Well, if you love ghost hunting, now is the time to pick up some new gear. GhostStop.com has a wide variety of equipment to choose from, and one of those items is Blue Buddy. He's back. The talking bear every investigator wants on their team. Click on the Ghost Stop banner ad at the top of the show's website and pick up your Blue Buddy today. Go to spring.com and sign up to create your own design or choose from a design from one of the many creators on there. Spring has ways to integrate your store on social media, custom stores, and they have digital and physical products. While you're there, check out the Talk in the Night merch store. To get started with Spring today, click on the banner ad on the Talk in the Night website. Go to the show's website and click on the links for each of my guests and purchase a book or other product that they may be promoting. Without them, there would be no Talk in the Night. Whether you're interested in the paranormal, conspiracy, technology, health, relationships, or any other topic the show covers, my guests have something for you. Check it out today on talkingthenight.com.
Don't say, darling, 'cause you'll fake it. Don't hide the tears, 'cause I know you're breaking. All this love and all this pain you've given. All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world.
To call into the show, Skype Talk in the Night or by phone at 817-717-1280. Now back to Talk in the Night with your host, Paranormal Phil. Okay, and we are back with my guest, Nicole Fanning, as we talk about dating relationships in this day and age, and we're also going to get into her books this hour. Now, I do have a couple of questions for her before we get into the books, but first, before we get into that, if you do want to call into the show, you heard the call-in numbers there, by Skype using the Skype name Talking the Night, or by phone at 817-717-1280. Almost forgot the number. I do that every once in a while. And then also go over to Spreaker.com, sign up for a free account. It don't cost anything. You can pop in the chat, say hi, listen, and join the discussion. I do interact with all my listeners and everything like that. So if you do have questions and you don't feel like calling, you can do your questions that way as well. Just go click on, after you sign up, click on Talk of the Night, go to the live show. Scroll down a little bit. There is a chat bar there, and you can chat with me and the other listeners there. So let's get a couple more questions in before we get into your book, because I think they might play a part in your book as well. And I wanted to ask, what do you think about those that are shy or fear rejection? Because, like I said, I'm kind of that shy person, more reserved person. But also, I have that sense of fear of rejection because of my past of being cheated on and ghosted and everything like that.
You mean like what? I guess what's the question? So,
what do you think about those that are shy or fear rejection, and how do you think people can probably overcome those things?
So I think we all have a fear of some fear of rejection. We don't. That's obviously not pleasant. I mean, nobody wants to be told that, the person that they're falling for is fallen for someone else or isn't interested in us or isn't attracted to us. So I think we all have that fear of rejection. But I do think that, it's obviously the only way to meet someone. So there's a lot of different ways that people can kind of overcome that. Obviously, I think just being very clear about like who they are, what they're looking for. Like we talked about, making sure that like the profile isn't just a bunch of perfect pictures. And then when you meet in person, the person's like, all right, I thought you said you were 5'10". You're actually 5'4". I'm very confused. That kind of thing. And obviously I think being like, if you are scared or shy of that kind of stuff, like double dating is great. Getting to know people that way. And obviously, like, just nurturing and creating those friendships first so that if for some reason it doesn't work out, there is that level of respect there. And, obviously making sure that, like, your priorities are the good stuff, like the meat of the relationship. Because then in that case, like, you'll be attracting someone who agrees with you and your priorities. And like, hopefully you'll be on more of like common ground from the start. So I think that's really tough. But it is one of those things where like, you just have to keep putting yourself back out there. And I know people that were really, really, I think everybody is like really discouraged right before they meet the one. Yeah. I think that's normal. Everybody is exhausted and tired, especially when they have been doing it for like, a really long time, doing like online dating. But if they would have stopped, then there's no chance that they would have met the one. So it's the two choices. You can either like completely shut you down and you're just done and you're not going to do it anymore and you're not going to put yourself out there and you resign yourself to be like, this is it, this is enough. And, or like you can keep doing it. But I do think that it's important to note that it's okay if you decide to just be on your own too. And I have people in my life that I love dearly that have just said, you know what, I'm kind of at this point where if I meet someone great, if I don't, and I'm okay with that too. And they are busy building a life that they want to live without really like feeling that they have to have a partner there with them. So I think that having that attitude of I'm going to make myself and my life something I enjoy doing and, a person that I enjoy being around, like myself, I think that even puts out a good energy into the universe. And sometimes like when people do take that ownership and decide to just work on themselves and, make themselves happy in their life, it's obvious. People can tell that you're happy and healthy, and that does attract people to you. So, obviously, like if you are someone who wants love and you want to be out there, like doing all those things and putting that effort in, that's exactly what you need to be doing. But also make sure that, you love you and you're taking care of you and you're putting that effort in to build a life that you want to have too. So,
yeah. Now, I think that kind of answered the question that I had in the chat here by one of my friends who's also named Nicole. But she said, what if someone, if you like someone who is interested in dating, but who is not interested in dating, Of course, she's feeling like she's cursed, like, because she was married for a while, and I get it. A lot of people have gone through being widowed and everything like that, and they hold a lot of resentment to somebody new, I think.
Right. So her question is like, what do you do when like you're interested in someone who is a little bit jaded and not interested in dating?
Yeah,
correct.
I think so.
Okay, so I would say, and it's a little bit hard, but I always kind of felt like the whole idea that you meet the right person at the wrong time just means that like it's not the right situation. Like, can you have someone that you absolutely have a connection with and, you know, you see the potential there? Absolutely. But if that person is like in a dead stop, brakes on full, it's not going to go anywhere. And therefore it makes it impossible. And so like, obviously keeping that person in your life and maybe keeping the door open and making them aware of your feelings. But like, you should never be like in a position where you are the one that's pulling the relationship forward, because all that's going to do is create an imbalance where like you're giving and giving and giving and giving, and that person is not giving back to you. Like my dad always had this like analogy where he talked about like two runners, and that you should be on your path and you should be running at the speed that you're running. And sometimes you'll have people that, you know, will come up beside you and they run with you, but you know, either they slow down because they don't want to run at your pace, or they go a little bit faster. Like that means that like they're not that partner. But like when you end up meeting that partner, the two of you are at that same pace and you're pulling each other forward. But you're both invested in the relationship and you're both like at the right point in your life for that to happen. And I also kind of feel like a relationship shouldn't be like 50% and 50%. It should be 100% and 100%, because as we all know, like shit happens. Life gets hard. Like someone loses a job, someone gets sick, something happens where that person can't give their portion of the relationship. So then what happens? Yes, of course, that person's going to pick up the slack. And you have to know that you have a partner that like is there for you as much as you are for them. So in that really tough situation, and I'm so sorry that this person is in this, because like I've been there, like, and I know people who have been there too. But like they have to be willing to open up a little bit to let you in. You know, it's one thing to say like, I'm scared and I'm jaded and I've been through a lot. But people move mountains when they want to. And they will, you know, even if it's like opening that back up and then, you know, she's really sensitive to like that person's needs and, you know, their triggers, that's something I'm sure she can absolutely do. But she has to know in order to like pursue something with that person that they're at least invested enough and that they value her as much as she values them.
Okay. Now, the last couple of questions that I do want to ask, I think would kind of play a part in the book, because you're talking about mafia, romance, and stuff like that. So I hit something and it decided to start shaking. It's like, really? But what is your thought? And I want to ask about toxic relationships and red flags, which, like I said, with mafia, romance, I feel that it play a part in the book. So what is your thoughts on toxic relationships and why people can't seem to notice the red flags to get out of them? And then I'll let you answer that, and I'll ask the second part to that question.
I think because, as you know, the old poets say, like, love is blind. And a lot of us are empaths, like whether we identify as one or not, but a lot of us are understanding, compassionate, or empaths, or, you know, we've been through some stuff. So when our partner is apparently going through something, we're just very understanding for probably way too long of whatever that person's going through. Like, oh, you know, like this isn't them. You know, they're just going through something. And this is a big problem when people like are in relationships with like textbook narcissists, because they fell in love with one person. They fell in love with a certain type of person. And then a little bit into the relationship, it seems like everything's different and they're just holding on because they want to get back to that person. But, I had a very good friend who was in this, a narcissistic relationship, and it nearly killed her. We'll put it that way. Cause he nearly killed her. And afterwards she was like, I don't understand. Like, we had this beautiful life. We had, like this beautiful relationship, we even had this beautiful wedding. And, I was just very honest with her. And I was like, it's because like the person you think you fell in love with doesn't exist. And it's why it's haunting you to let go of that relationship. But the truth is that like you're holding on to an imaginary relationship that you had with this person, because all of your memories are real. All of your feelings are real. All of your experiences are real, but they were not what they said they were. It wasn't what they said on the tin. So it's very difficult. And when we love people, again, we can be very understanding of like when faults or things come up that are a little bit sketchy for us. So I think that's there. But I do think that when we are in tune with ourselves and we are trying to follow our own intuition, those red flags are more apparent than we really think they are. They can be there. It's like, even if it's just like the hair stands up on the back of your neck or something they say just like, is like nails on a chalkboard. It's there. It's just how brave are we? Are we willing to say, I will be alone versus being in this toxic relationship? Yeah. Like how much is your own happiness worth to you?
Yeah. And speaking of which, I have a friend that was the same way, that she was in a relationship for about 9 months. And he was cheating on her the whole time, but it took her a while. She got beat up a couple times by him. And speaking of the red flags, there are plenty of red flags to be seen. But as you mentioned, a lot of people don't want to pay attention to that. Whether it's that situation or they've been ghosted or cheated on and stuff like that. And like me and other people tried to tell her, this guy's no good for you. He's treating you bad. You need to get away from that situation. But of course, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yep. And it took me
especially with narcissistic relationships, it's tough.
Yeah, it took me for a while to learn that, okay, I'm getting ghosted, I'm getting cheated. Well, guess what? I've gotten to that point where, well, if you're going to do that, well, next.
Right.
I don't need that.
Good for you, because that's not easy to do. A lot of people can't. So that's really brave, and like that's amazing.
Yeah, but I wanted to bring up the whole toxic and red flags because, like I said, I think it would play a part in your books. And speaking of the books, so you are the author of 2 current books, and I want to ask some questions before we get into about the books. But why did you get into writing, and when did you first realize you wanted to be an author?
So I actually started writing really young. This is kind of dorky, but my mom got me into the A-Team series, and I was so obsessed with it. I was born in 1988, and the show went off the air 2 years before I was born. But my mom didn't tell me that. And so I watched all these A-Team. I watched like all the series, every episode of every series. And then I would actually write my own episodes, like of stuff I wanted the TV show to produce. So I would write my own episode, and like it was horrible, by the way. None of them should be produced. But even at the time, like it was because like they had like the girl in the show whose name was Amy, and I really wanted to see Amy and Faith get together, and it just wasn't happening. And so I would write these episodes for like their romance, and I'd give it to my mom, and I'd tell her to mail it to the producers, and my mom would just like play along. But I was really hoping that they would make my episodes, and they never did because they weren't around anymore. But then like when I like was just before high school, just when high school was starting, I actually had a friend, and her and I would write, we had like this ongoing like soap opera, each of us did, and we had different stories, and every weekend we'd go home and we would write a new chapter of the story, and then on Monday we'd come in and we would trade chapters. And so, yeah, it was, it's always kind of been there. And, I always had this idea for this series. Obviously, like, when I say, like, I have this idea, I've had this idea for this mafia world for, like, years, like, probably almost a decade. Just stuff I was creating in my car when I was, like, commuting back and forth to work. And I had a job when I lived in California where I would drive sometimes, 4 to 8 hours a day. And so I had a lot of time in the car. And so I was creating this little mafia verse, as I call it. And, from there, when the pandemic happened and I realized, like, wow, life is short and now we're all stuck in our houses. I can either learn to knit, or I could write my story. And, like, now that I have the time, because it was always a thing of, like, oh, I just don't have the time. Well, now I had plenty of time. Yeah. So, I decided to sit down and write it. And I ended up writing Catalyst. First, actually, I wrote 122 pages of character backstory for all of the characters in the book so that, like, each character kind of had a unique voice and history. And then I wrote the whole plot for, like, all of the books, which right now there'll be 4 in this series. And then there'll be another 10 books that'll just be splattering of, like, smaller novellas, just, like, part of this world. So I wrote the whole plot for all of that before I wrote A Word of Catalyst. And then I ended up writing Catalyst, and I sent it to a friend of mine just as, like, for fun. Like, hey, look what I did during the pandemic. And she read it and was like, this is really good. Like, this is awesome, and you should publish this. And at first I was like, can I do that? Like, I was like, me? Like, me? But then I realized, I was like, wow, like, that was the best time I ever had. It was the most productive I was at work. While, like, as soon as I was clocked out, I would go write my story, like, make dinner, go back to writing my story, write late into the night, like, wake up, go to work, do it all over again. Obviously the commute at that point was 10 feet from my bed to my desk. So it was a little bit easier during the pandemic.
I know all about like California traffic and everything like that because, like I said, I was born in Southern California, so I would travel to Los Angeles, about 60 miles away, on the weekends when it was the busiest of traffic, just to do ghost tours. So I know all about that traffic out there.
Oh, I am a sucker for ghost. Don't even get me started. I've been trying to get my husband to take me to Georgia, because I hear, like, Georgia has got a lot of good ghost towns and stuff, and I'm a spooky fanatic. So, but yeah, no, I had this vision for what this was going to be, and it ended up being something that, like, I fell in love with, and it's the best parts of me in these books, and so I'm incredibly proud of it. Okay,
now, like you mentioned about writing the backstories for these characters and everything like that, I think what it sounds like is that whole trying to write things for TV series and everything like that kind of played a part in helping with that, writing the backstories. Because, I mean, as a screenwriter myself, I'm working on my first horror movie screenplay, which is going to be shot out in Southern California, Beverly Hills, at a house that sits 150 feet away from where the Manson murders happened. But I experienced, it's kind of based on a true event, but I had to go and write all these, like I said, I find screenplay writing a lot easier than trying to write a book, because you have less pages, less lines to worry about, but you also have to write that backstory for each character, like how are they going to play out in the movie, and how everything's going to go with that movie.
Yeah, no, the character backstories were really important for me. So my books are written in, like, first person point of view, and every other chapter they switch, because we have Jackson, the dangerous mafia don, in the even chapters, and Natalie, the, feisty, spicy ER nurse, in the odd number chapters. And in order to be able to do that, you really have to have, like, a strong, very structured voice and personality for each character to be able to go in and out of that character. And sometimes I would write, like, I also have ADD. So like the reason I wrote the entire plot was because I needed that plot skeleton, because sometimes I like to write in order. I like to write chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3, then chapter 4. But sometimes I'll write chapters 1 through 4, be not interested really in writing chapter 5 just yet, and want to write chapter 22. And if I have an idea of what needs to happen in chapter 22 based on whatever main event is happening, I can do that. I can kind of jump around a little bit. And so like when I write these characters and I write their perspective, sometimes I'll write chapter 2, then chapter 4, then chapter 6, because just being in like the Jackson mindset is a very different feel from being in the Natalie mindset. So, and obviously with the characters that you have coming in and out, I want like their personalities to be very evident as well, the side characters. So there's a cast of colorful characters there, both main and side. And the little novellas that will sprinkle out over the next couple years around this little mafia verse will be from the perspective of those side characters. So we'll have these 4 books in the main series that will be Jackson and Natalie, and they will be canon. So they'll be, you'll want to read these 4 so that you can kind of understand the world that's been created. And then, from there, we'll have some little books that pop up from the side characters' perspective. So we'll still see Jackson and Natalie just like from a different perspective, if that makes sense.
Okay. Now, the first book in this series is Catalyst, correct?
Yes. First book is Catalyst. That's where they meet. That's where all the magic happens. And then Ignite it's Ignite. It is, it's more intense for sure on so many levels. And I have warned readers, like, this is a spicy book. See, I don't like, okay, so I always define, there's a difference between a book with spice and a spicy book. Like a spicy book is, there's a lot of intimate scenes. We'll say that much. My books are like, there's a plot and there's a story, but there are, graphic scenes, like not for children. Both in like the violence world as well as like kind of the creepy aspect, as well as obviously the intimate steamy stuff. So like when it's violent, it's violent. When it's steamy. When it's, creepy, it's creepy, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And Ignite, like Catalyst is like, the mild salsa, and this is like the medium salsa. And then Flashpoint, which I'm writing now, is the hot salsa, and then Embers, which will be out, will be like the hottest. So it just kind of gets a little bit more intense as it goes on.
Yeah, more into the story and everything like that. Now, real quick before we go to our last commercial break of the night, why this genre books? Why mafia romance rather than maybe a traditional romance novel?
I think because, again, like, I love a good villain story. I love a good morally gray character. And I also really love the whole aspect of the mafia world. And that's something I could talk about more after the commercial break. But I did so much research on this book. I didn't want it to just be a mafia book that was written because of other mafia books. I wanted it to be one that was, like, researched in like actual mafia lore, actual mafia behavior, what it was like for people who, actually were in the mafia or had a connection to somebody in the mafia, how they actually behave. So it's a little bit different in that sense too.
Okay. Yeah, because like I was mentioning about my screenplay, I really didn't do too much research as far as what I've gotten written so far. But, of course, I know the place that the story is kind of based off of, and an event that happened there. So I kind of know exactly what I'm working with. But
right.
I do want, I based it off of kind of true events, but changed it around a little bit because I don't want the real true story to get out there. But it's just going to have that wow factor, like, well, I didn't expect that to come. And I think what you're getting at is, in your books, you got that wow factor where I didn't expect that to happen.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's all of the books. The books go a million miles an hour from the start. So.
Okay, well, we are at the last commercial break of the night, but we'll be right back after the short commercial break with my guest, Nicole Fanning, as we talk about her books and everything like that. Hearts of Infernal series. We'll be right back.
With your heart. But these rose-colored glasses do wonders when there's a spark. I thought I'd be the one to make you wanna change your life, make you wanna take a wife. Oh, I could be your Joan of Arc. It's enough for me if there's a spark. Yeah, well, you took me out to dine. Maybe I had too much wine, but I never felt so desired. Boys who squire just keep me tired. I saw you.
Do you need music for your radio show, podcast, or YouTube channel, but need a music license to play it on your show? Well, go to artlist.io and check out the plans they have. They have 3 plans to choose from: personal, unlimited, and enterprise. All the music that you hear on the show is from Artlist, and there is a banner ad on the show's website. Check it out today. Do you love the strange, unusual, and weird unexplained mysteries? Do you like reading about the paranormal and other happenings? Well, I have the website for you, unexplainedmysteries.com. On there you will find so much, such as the latest news and articles, forums, news with video, and so much more. That's unexplained-mysteries.com, or you can click on the banner ad on the show's website to take you right there. Do you love history? Do you wonder what happened on this day in history? Well, check out history.com/this day in history and find out what happened on this day in recorded history. You can also click on the image on the Talk of the Night website under This Day in History and check out one of the many things that happened. The show's website lists a different event in history every day, so check it out today.
I hope you don't mind if I say that I love you, 'cause there's so many ways that I want to carve out our names, board a last minute plane, just us two. We can chase the sun as it sets in the mountains, find luck like a bet in Greek fountains, or lay lazy in bed with your head on my chest.
Call into the show, Skype Talk in the Night, or by phone at 817-717-1280. Now back to Talk in the Night with your host, Paranormal Phil. Okay, and we are back with my guest for the last segment of the show. Now, if you do want to call in and ask the guest a question, use the Skype name Talk in the Night or by phone at 817-717-1280, or go over to Spreaker.com, sign up for a free account. Don't cost a thing. You don't have to record anything. You can join the discussion, join the chat, and ask questions that way. I do interact with all my listeners, and I don't forget about any listener. If I do, I'll get back to it. But I do interact with all my listeners. I do see everything that comes out. So let's get back into the books and everything like that in the Heart of Infernal series. Now, I forget what you were talking about before the commercial break that you were going to continue after the commercial break.
Just talking about the research that went into.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The books that. So I did, again, like I wanted it to be as authentic as possible. And, obviously I have Natalie as like an ER nurse. So like I wanted her stuff to be really accurate as well. Like whenever she's doing triage on a patient or a, mafia guy who got shot miscellaneously, I want it to be accurate. But I also wanted like to showcase that, I'm a big fan of all like the old school underground crime organizations. Like when we think mafia, we think Sicilian mafia. And that's a really common like misconception, is that like the only mafia is Sicilian. That's not true. There's actually mafia organizations all across the world. Like there's one in Greece, there's a big one in the UK, there's a big one in Ireland and Scotland. And these crime organizations, on top of like there being the cartel or the triads, like they have their own sense of honor and loyalty. And instead of just like regurgitating information that was just written in other mafia books or in other mafia media, I wanted it to be like accurate as much as possible. So the research I sought out was, interactions that people had, either that they were in the mafia or that they were, in a relationship with somebody in the mafia, whether that's like familial or like a romantic one. And those kinds of interactions with the mafia had a very different feel, because there was almost like a sense of reverence there. Obviously we're not talking about like what happened that, could be bad. But like the way that they revered the mafia and the way that they talked about it seemed that there was a deep sense of like loyalty and honor and family, but that loyalty and honor and family was the mafia, not the local government. So that their priorities shifted and that they were their own little organization, their own little world. And I just thought that was so beautiful and so unique and just fascinating. So I've always kind of been obsessed with like the mafias and like the old crime organizations of old. And so when I wrote this book, I wanted this to just have a different feel to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the old time gangsters, the gangsters you think of in the 1920s and stuff like that. Now, you mentioned different mafias and everything like that. Like, I got a cousin that's part of the Mexican mafia, or he was part of it. I don't know if he ever got out, but I know it's a hard thing to get out of something like that crime organization. And,
right. You're lucky if you get out.
Yeah.
And that's why, like,
or at least above ground, get out above ground. Should mention that.
Yeah, of course.
But speaking of the characters, you mentioned Jackson, who is the mafia don, correct? And Natalia is the nurse. And how did they get into meeting each other? Was it through like maybe the mafia don? Because I don't want to touch too much into what's going on.
It's honestly, it's the whole like beginning of the story. So Jackson is a single dad, and his we won't call her his wife, but his ex-partner, she passed away in a fire. So he has a 6-year-old daughter, and he's obviously just on this emotionless warpath of domination in the city of Chicago. But he obviously can't just roll around with Mafia Don on his forehead. So he has to participate in social life for the rich and elite. And he is a billionaire hotel owner. So he owns a chain of hotels in the city. And Natalie just happens to be in Chicago for her cousin's wedding, and she is staying at one of Jackson's hotels. And she's there having a rough time because her ex-fiance happens to be the best man in this wedding. And her entire family doesn't know that the reason he's her ex-fiance is because he cheated on her. And she called it off, but at the same time was, worried that losing him would hurt her family. So she didn't tell the family why she called it off. She just called off the wedding. So she knows that her whole family is going to be pushing her to get back together with him. And she just wants to get through this week that she's there for the wedding. And, it's kind of estranged her from her family. So it's a very uncomfortable trip for her. But she's going to be there, and she's going to be staying at one of Jackson's hotels. And what ends up happening is when she pulls into the parking garage, she ends up pulling into the wrong parking garage, and she ends up in the executive garage. And she ends up stopping a kidnapping attempt of Jackson's daughter. So she witnesses someone trying to snatch this little girl, and she steps in and stops it in typical just regular person. Like she's trying to figure out how to, befuddle this kidnapper. But she ends up stopping it. And she gets in his path because obviously they're like, this is the girl who saved your daughter. And he is so confused because he comes from this world of, just transactional relationships. So what does she want from him? Is she from another family? Is she from the CIA? Is she from the police? Is she, just some girl who's looking to get with him? Like he thinks that there's a reason that she did what she did because nobody would just do the right thing, right? For no reason. And she's just totally confused because she's like, I just saved your kid. Why are you being such a jerk to me? So it's kind of a little bit of a rocky meeting at first, but he ends up developing this really high respect for her. And he realizes that, she's struggling with her family and like what Colton, her ex-fiance, did to her. And she realizes that he's struggling with the loss of his ex and, just trying to keep his head above water. And so this like beautiful relationship happens where he doesn't really know what he's doing because his whole life has been the mafia since he was a little boy. So he hasn't, and even the last relationship that he was in was one that just kind of fell into his lap. So he doesn't really know how to date. And again, he's this egotistical, megalomaniac that is just does everything to like the 100th degree. So it's kind of beautiful, kind of comical. But also there's parts of it that are really dark because now that she's in a relationship with him, it kind of puts her as a target too, because they are seeing, hey, this is a guy who never shows emotion, who's, he runs the city with an iron fist, and suddenly he's doting over this girl. Who is this girl? And so the other, kind of sketchy characters are like after her now. So it's an old school romance where like both of these characters are broken and damaged in different ways. And somehow those broken pieces kind of come together to create this like beautiful collage. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, now, when you mentioned about her saving his daughter and everything, it almost kind of brought back the thoughts of the mouse in Zootopia, the Mafia Don mouse, where the rabbit cop saved his daughter from being run over by a big ball of cheese. So, and he kind of spared her because she did that for him. And personally, when I started doing my research for you to ask type all these questions, because I do a lot of research, I have enough questions to last for a 5-hour show, but I pick and choose what I want to go with and everything like that. Sometimes I don't even go with that. I go off of what you said before. And that thought wasn't even in my whole process here. It just came off of what you said. But when I first started researching everything and looking into everything for questions, when I noticed it was a nurse falling in love with a mafia don, I was thinking, okay, did he get shot and end up in the hospital where she worked and everything like that?
Yeah, no, nothing like that. Really, she puts herself on his path because his daughter kind of is like, she had a new tutor that day, a new teacher, and she kind of escaped from the teacher and was about to get kidnapped, and Natalie just stepped in and handled it. And then he was just like beside himself, obviously mad at his own security, like, how did we let this happen? And also like, who is this regular woman that saved my daughter's life? And so he admires her. Like, even though he's kind of a jerk to her up front, that's very quickly was snuffed out when he realizes that, she is who she says she is. She did it because, she's just a good person. And he is just this really hardened, jaded man who, again, like, just had his last relationship kind of fall into his lap. It wasn't a healthy relationship at all. And he doesn't know how to love. Like, there's a line that he says where he says, like, I didn't know what I wanted, so I just stopped wanting. And I think that really sums up a lot of Jackson's attitude, where He does things for his family, as in like the mafia family, and his daughter, and that's it. And he's, you know, when he wants to be with women, he can be with women, but they're nothing to him. So, yeah, seeing Natalie come into the picture and have her be someone that he immediately respects and that intrigues him is just completely different for him. And he's like a fish out of water, and it's kind of cute at times. Cause like when he's a jerk to her, you know, he's got kind of like this father figure in Ethan, who's like his like head of security, his head, you know, bodyguard. And, I think that's important to mention too. Like Jackson has what's called the Alpha Squad, and the Alpha Squad are like the 6 generals that he has, the 6 men that are like the best of everything, and they handle different aspects of his business. And so the Alpha Squad is really important in the books because like they're some of the side characters that interact with us all the time. And Ethan is like one of those Alpha Squad and the head of the Alpha Squad, and he kind of, you know, puts Jackson in his place. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna mess this up. Like, she's a good girl, and you know, you should pursue this. And so Jackson tries to apologize, and Natalie obviously thinks Jackson's a jerk because her first interaction with him wasn't, oh, thank you for saving my daughter. It was like, who are you and what are you doing here?
He resorted to that crime boss mentality.
Right. So he tries to apologize, and she's just like, I don't want your apology. And so he does. Again, like he reacts in the way that you would expect for someone who's been spoiled all his life and grown up as a billionaire. And so he like goes to like this extreme level of sending her flowers. And it's just, there's funny parts in the book as well. But again, he has no idea what he's doing. And he's just this big ball of rage. And yeah, but he's definitely got like a soft like heart to him as well. So.
Okay. So, now, we talked about Catalyst and everything, and Night is the second book. And that was, how long did it take to write just those 2 books?
So, the 2 books took me a year. And the books are huge. The first book is 154,000 words, and about 400 and something pages. And it took me 8 months, where I was kind of, some days I would write it, then there'd be like weeks that I didn't write, and then, you know, like it was very a little bit more lackadaisical until like the end. But book 2, which again like is more intense and just it's I think you're not supposed to have favorites as like the book author. Like, you know, these are my book babies, and I'm not supposed to have a favorite child. But book 2 is my favorite. Book 2 is actually 187,000 words, so nearly 200,000 words. It's bigger. And it's intense, and it took me 4 months. So it took me half the time. So all in all, it was about a year for those 2 books. Now, Flashpoint has been a little bit harder, only because I originally had wanted 4 books. So the titles of these books, I'm kind of a dork, and I love the idea of the 4 stages of a fire. So you would have like the catalyst, and then you would have the ignition when like the fire actually like takes flame. The flashpoint would be the hottest point of the fire, and then the embers would be, you know, the what's left over. But like you could still start a fire from the embers as well. So I wanted 4 books because I wanted it to be the 4 stages of a fire. However, I'm a big proponent of I don't want books that are just filled with unnecessary stuff. So like, everything in my books happens for a reason. Every character happens for a reason. And so I was like, well, maybe I could just condense it down to 3. Like, I'd rather have 3 action-packed books than have 4, you know, books. So Flashpoint has been a little bit harder because I decided that I was actually cramming too much into 1 book. And so I've spread it out into the 4 books. So it went from being a trilogy to being a quadrology. I don't know if that's the right word, but we're going to go with it.
I'm not too sure. It's an interesting word.
But yeah, went from 3 to 4. And so Flashpoint has had some plot adjustments, but I'm so excited for it. It's going to be really great.
Now, on that series of 4 books, I think you mentioned about doing more little novelettes and everything. Is that going to play off of the same whole storyline?
Yes. So Yes and no. So it will, that's why I kind of called it like a mafia verse. I imagine it kind of like the Marvel verse, where all of the books tie in to like the main Avenger movies. But there's like little spin-offs and little one-offs and little miniseries and things like that. So ultimately I have 14 books planned that will revolve in the same world. But these 4 books, Catalyst, Ignite, Flashpoint, and Embers, they are the meat of it. Like, that's where you learn about the world and the characters and everybody. And then the books that come out sporadically from there, the little novellas, and, I have 2 prequels planned. I have one spinoff that, comes right after this timeline. They will be from different perspectives. So they'll be, like, instead of Charlie being a side character in the Heart of the Inferno 4 books, in his book, he'll be the main character, and Natalie and Jackson would be side characters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, they'd be there, just like from the perspective of them being side characters.
Okay. Now, the reason why I asked that question is because I wanted to ask one last question before we wrap things up with you. Now, after you're done with all those books and everything like that, is there any plans to write anything from another genre?
Yes. I have 3 other genres that I would like to tap into at this time. I'd like to do kind of like a rom-com. I have like an Omega-verse that I'd like to do. And then kind of one, I'm not quite sure, so I won't mention that one. But there's at least 3 different genres that I'm toying with after I've closed out the Mafia portion. So.
Okay. Yeah, because like me, I can delve into anything, especially if I decided to get into doing more than just the one screenplay that I'm working on now, because I just want to write it and put it out there, because my friend out in Beverly Hills is a producer, so I have connections in Hollywood, so it's not like I'm trying to be like a musician trying to go down Music Row in Nashville and be like, here's my tape. No, I got a little bit of connection there. But I find most of my inspiration from the horror genre and the whole paranormal aspect of things, because like me, when I was born, the day that I was born, actually month, day, and year all together, I was born on the day that The Exorcist came out in theater, so it plays a part in who I am and what I like.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. That, it shapes you, and if you write what you're passionate about, it shows. If you, kind of like you're doing a screenplay, absolutely. And I would love to see Heart of the Inferno become a screenplay. That would be amazing. And I have somebody who has said, if I did write it as a screenplay, they would, put it in front of somebody for me. But I haven't had the time.
Yeah.
And I really want to finish the books and get that done. So, but yeah, I would love it. I think it's a unique story. I think it's a beautiful story. And I think the characters will really steal your heart, for sure.
Okay. Now, last thing before we wrap up things with you, tell listeners where they can find out more about you and the books in this series.
So I am on Kindle and Amazon, so you can buy them in paperback on Amazon, and the books are on Kindle, and if you are a Kindle Unlimited member, they are free. And they can find me at my website, which is nherownwords.com. That's the letter N, herownwords.com. And yeah, that's me. They can also find me on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm not very good at Twitter, so I don't post very often. But I'm there. They can find me there too.
Like me, I never got into the whole TikTok thing. I'm on many different sites, social media, but TikTok, just for some reason, I'm better behind the mic than I am behind the camera lens, but
yeah. No, I do some silly videos on TikTok for my fans, and try to engage them in like kind of what's going on, but yeah, so.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight and share your story and everything like that. And definitely follow Nicole and her work. Everything is linked up on the show's website. It'll be up there till midnight, and then after that on the homepage, then it goes to the radio show tab under guests of the show. But every link is there. But if you do want to go to her website, there is a banner ad at the top of the website that is linked up to her website, so you can go straight there and check out everything that she has. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And tomorrow night we are getting into... this week has been... Normally a lot of my shows are about the paranormal, but I do like talking about different things. As you know, my topics range from the paranormal to technology and science, dating and relationships, health and wellness, politics and conspiracies, and veterans issues, because I'm a veteran, so I learn a little bit about everything, so I can talk about this. But tomorrow night, we are going to be joined by my guest, Joseph Leonard, as we talk about terrorism and terrorist organizations around the world and what they might be planning, and we'll talk about some other things. I think we're going to have a heated discussion, I would say, just because of my beliefs and his beliefs. I know he's a conservative, but I'm not a liberal, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a conservative. I am somebody that hates government to the T. So we're going to probably have a heated discussion about some things tomorrow, but that's what we're here for, is to have a discussion. We don't always have to agree with each other, and maybe he can see something that I'm saying and I can see something that he's saying, and that's where we can come to a consensus and have an open discussion about this. But we'll find out tomorrow when I welcome my guest, Joseph Leonard. And of course, his website is linked up on a banner ad at the top of the page. Then, of course, Thursday night, we're going to get back into the whole paranormal thing with hypnotism and hypnosis and psychic healing. We're going to talk with my guest, Tony Green, as we talk about psychic healing, hypnosis, being a psychic medium, all that good stuff, and her being on radio and TV shows. And then, of course, Friday night, it's the 13th. So be prepared for this Friday, because I do want to hear your stories about superstition and all that good stuff related to Friday the 13th. So that's what I got coming up for the show for this rest of this week. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank again Nicole for coming on the show. And,
thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. And until tomorrow night, when I welcome my guest, Joseph Leonard, and we talk about terrorism and so much more, I shall see you on the dark side. Good night from Talking the Night. Darkness has fallen. Turn on the radio, and you hear him talking. Listening to what he has to say, all about the paranormal.